All right, everyone, today are the 4 reasons why I believe maybe your first investment property should be the first property you buy. Let's jump in. So when I first went to go get a mortgage, I wanted to know everything that I could possibly do, all my options. So I said, what about a single family versus a multi versus a condo? What's the deal? The lender told me, here's what we can do. You can buy a single family home and you are qualified for $500,000. He said, or you can buy a multi. And I said, well, still 500. He said, nope, that you would be qualified for $750,000. What? Well, why? Wouldn't I just be qualified for one amount? Why does it change with a multi? Well, I'll answer that for you now. When they're doing the math to figure out how much you're qualified for a single family, what they're taking in is what you can afford monthly based on what you're getting, the money income coming in. When they do the multi, they do the exact same thing, except what they're adding to it is that if you buy a multi, you now have more income because you're living in the first floor, we'll say, and the second floor, let's say these are each 2-bedroom units. And let's say the average unit in your town gets about $1,000 per bedroom. So the top unit is getting you $2,000. Now what the bank does, they take 70% of whatever the average rent is, and they add that to your monthly income when they're running numbers. So the bank is gonna say whatever you can currently afford, plus we are gonna add to the math equation that you should easily be able to get $1,400 for that top unit. So because you'll be cash flowing more, the bank allows you to borrow a little bit more money from them. Now, let's say I lived in both these scenarios for 5 years. Let's see after 5 years, what happens in the situation you're in versus single family or the multi. So let's say real estate goes up about 6% a year. So 6 times 5 we know is 30. So that would mean after the 5 years of living there, which is like an average time, your real estate will have gone up 30%. So if we look at the 500,000 times 0.3, we made $150,000 on this property. It's gone up in value, and that's great. Now, we look at the $750,000 times 0.3. This one has made $225,000. So already we have a significant difference. So after 5 years, one has made you $150,000, one has made you $225,000. Now let's say during that 5-year period, you saved $10,000 every single year you were there in your savings to buy your next place. And you wanted to put 10% down. Well, after 5 years, if you lived in this house, you have your $150,000, you've increased the value. That $10,000, if you're trying not to touch your equity and rent this place out, isn't enough. That $10,000 a year isn't enough because $10,000 times 5 years is $50,000, and it's not quite 10% of the $750,000 multi. Now, if you bought the multi first in 5 years, you have that $50,000. That $50,000 can buy you a $500,000 single family. So it's much easier to go from this property to this property than going from this property to this property, if that makes sense. And lastly, one of the reasons I think it's really smart to buy a multifamily as your first property is that when you own or occupy a property, you get a better interest rate. So often if you ask a lender, hey, what are interest rates at? If you tell them, hey, I'm also thinking about buying an investment property, they will say something like, rates are 1% to 1.5% more for an investment property. So let's say hypothetically, rates are at 6% for standard owner occupant buying a home. Well, now you're looking at 7.5 to 8% to make it an investment property. And you're locking into that rate for life. So my advice would be move into this house, lock into the low rate for life, And then you've built more equity in the first 5 years. Once you leave, rent has gone up in each unit now. Rent's totally different, and 5 years later, it's probably gone up about $50 per year per unit. So 50 times 5 is 250. So now the whole entire place is cash flowing. 250 for the top floor, 250 for the bottom. The whole place is bringing you an additional $500 more per rent. So you rent this place out, you easily move into this first single family with your money, and you're good to go. And that is why I think it's a smart idea, if you can make it work, to buy a multifamily investment property as your first home and then move into your single family.
So let's review why I think an investment property should maybe be the first property you buy. 1, it allows you to borrow or leverage the most amount of money possible from a lender. 2, you build more equity with the lender's money. 3, you own a better cash flowing property. And 4, you get a lower rate on a property that will ultimately become an investment property.